Hi there. The recently published Nigerian GDP report for the second quarter of 2020 had many interesting revelations. In this episode of the SME series, we take a look at three sectors that made huge profits during the lockdown for SMEs to exploit. Now, these sectors have been picked out specifically for the growth rate they recorded from the previous quarter, and I also compared their performance to the second quarter of 2019 to arrive at my conclusion that they were indeed boosted by the lockdown. Number one on the list is the ICT sector. The ICT sector as a whole proved to be the most lucrative for the second quarter as it grew by 20% from the first quarter, which represents an increase of almost 500 billion naira. While the broadcasting subsector contributed to this growth by adding 86 billion naira from the first quarter, the telecom subsector in particular was the biggest contributor, increasing by over 450 billion naira between first quarter and the second quarter of 2020. When compared to the second quarter of 2019, telecoms grew by 18.1% in the second quarter of 2020, which coincidentally was the lockdown period in the country. In other words, the COVID-19 pandemic proved to be more lucrative for the ICT sector than the 2019 general elections. Now that's huge. As more businesses are beginning to see the importance of technology in their daily activities, this sector is expected to remain profitable for the foreseeable future. Another sector that benefited immensely from the pandemic is the electricity, gas, steam, and air conditioning supply sector, which added over 41 billion naira to grow by 122% from the first quarter to the second quarter of 2020. This is obviously due to the lockdown, which forced Nigerians to stay indoors since April, making the demand for basic household needs like electricity and cooking gas to skyrocket. This sector actually recorded the second biggest growth rate in second quarter of 2020. I recommend that SMEs should exploit this sector since people will likely continue to spend more time at home after the lockdown is lifted. Number three on the list is the water supply, sewerage, waste management, and remediation sector, which grew by 38.69% in the second quarter of 2020. Now, in figures, that's over 11 billion naira during the lockdown period. This sector actually increased by 5% when compared to the same quarter of 2019. Just like the previous sector highlighted, having people stay indoors for prolonged periods naturally resulted in the increased need for clean water and waste disposal. There are many ways that SMEs can tap into this lucrative sector since surveys show that more people will remain indoors even after the lockdown. Other notable sectors that grew during the lockdown are the financial sector, with financial institutions adding almost 17 billion naira in the second quarter and surpassing the same quarter of 2019 by a whopping 28%. Expect more gains in this sector since businesses will seek loans and other forms of financial assistance to bounce back. The quarrying and other mineral subsector stood out with an unprecedented 1,786% increase in the second quarter of 2020. While this subsector may be capital intensive to set up, it will prove profitable to SMEs if they can render support services and eventually tap into its huge potentials. Finally, the agriculture sector was one of those sectors that experienced a boom during the second quarter of 2020, with the crop production subsector standing out tall. While it may not have recorded astronomical growth rates like the aforementioned, with just 8.5%, it still posted a huge 274 billion naira increase from the first quarter. This is the second largest increase after telecoms in terms of figures for all of the second quarter. Crop production also single-handedly contributed 22% of GDP, the largest for the second quarter, making it a major market for small businesses. So, there we have it, the sectors that have adapted to take advantage of the new normal. Small and medium enterprises should shift their focus as they hold many opportunities waiting to be exploited. Make sure to watch out for the next episode. We will highlight sectors that may no longer be lucrative because they moved in the opposite direction. See you next time.